My girlfriend only comes over at night. And now I know why. When I met Emily, she was perfect. Almost too perfect. She was beautiful in that classic, effortless way. Long dark hair, flawless pale skin, and those deep, hypnotic green eyes that always seemed to pull me in. She was mysterious, too, never revealing too much about herself, always changing the subject when I asked personal questions. But I didn't care. She made me feel alive, more than I had in years. The only strange thing? She only came over at night. I didn't think much of it at first. Some people just weren't morning people, right? Maybe she worked late, maybe she had insomnia. But after a while, it started to nag at me. She never wanted to meet up for lunch, never FaceTime during the day. I had never even seen her in direct sunlight. When I jokingly called her a vampire, she just smiled and changed the subject. That should have been my first warning. At first, dating Emily was intoxicating. Every night, she'd show up at my apartment, and we'd talk for hours. She had this way of speaking, soft, slow, deliberate, like every word was meant to sink deep into my brain. And I'd let her. I never wanted our nights to end. But then, things started to change. I was always exhausted. Even after sleeping a full 8 hours, I'd wake up feeling drained, dizzy, empty. My body felt heavy, my limbs sluggish, like I was moving through water. And then I noticed the marks. Tiny, perfectly spaced puncture wounds on my neck, my wrists, even my collarbone. I told myself it was just my skin acting up, maybe bug bites or scratches from sleep. But they didn't fade. And every morning, there were more. Emily always held me closer before sunrise, pulling me into her embrace just as the sky started to lighten. Her fingers would trace my pulse, her lips brushing my skin like she was memorizing every vein. I should have left. I should have ended it. But I couldn't. One night, I woke up feeling wrong. Not like normal exhaustion. This was worse. My body was paralyzed. I could see, I could hear, but I couldn't move. Emily was on top of me, her face inches from mine, her dark hair cascading around us like a veil. But something was different. Her eyes, those mesmerizing green eyes, weren't green anymore. They were black, completely black, like twin voids, swallowing every trace of light in the room. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come out. My throat felt dry. She smiled, a slow, lazy smile, and then she tilted her head and opened her mouth. Her teeth were sharp, two elongated canines gleamed under the moonlight streaming through the window. My heart slammed against my ribs. She lowered her head, slowly, painfully slow, and then I felt it. The sharp sting, the pressure, the warmth of my own blood leaving my body. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I could only watch as Emily fed, her eyes fluttering shut like she was drinking something divine. And as she pulled away, licking the last traces of crimson from her lips, she whispered, "You taste so good." Then everything went black. I woke up at noon, alone. For the first time in weeks, Emily wasn't there. My heart raced as I sat up, my entire body sore cold. My sheets were damp with sweat, my shirt stained with blood. I stumbled to the bathroom, flicked on the light, and I nearly screamed. My reflection was pale, too pale. My skin looked almost translucent, faint blue veins visible beneath the surface. The marks on my neck were deeper now, more pronounced. But worst of all, my canines were getting longer. I didn't hear from Emily for 3 days. Then, on the 4th night, she showed up at my door. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 2 other figures, a tall man with haunting silver eyes and a petite woman with jet black lips. They looked hungry. Emily tilted her head, that familiar lazy smile on her lips. "I told you," she murmured. "You taste so good." I took a step back. "What do you want?" Her smile widened. "I didn't come to drink tonight," she said softly. She reached out, gently, almost lovingly, her cold fingers brushing against my chest. "I came to see if you're ready." I didn't understand at first, but then I saw my own reflection in the hallway mirror. My eyes were turning black, and deep inside my chest, I felt it. That craving, that thirst. And I knew I was no longer just prey. I was turning into something else. Emily wasn't my girlfriend. She was my maker. And soon, I wouldn't be able to resist. Soon, I would be just like her. And worst of all, I didn't know if I wanted to stop it. When I found the listing for a cheap apartment in the city, I thought I had struck gold. $500 for my own room in a two-bedroom place? In this economy? It sounded too good to be true. But at the time, I was desperate. So desperate that I ignored every red flag. My last roommate bailed on me last minute, and I was running out of time before I'd be stuck sleeping in my car. So when Jake, the guy renting out the room, responded within minutes of my inquiry, I jumped at the chance. He was quiet, pale, almost sickly looking, with dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. He barely spoke, just handed me the key and muttered something about moving in whenever I was ready. No lease agreement, no deposit. Just pay me cash on the first of the month and don't go in my room. Weird, but not a deal breaker. I moved in the next day, and that's when I noticed things were off. There were rules, strange ones. Rule number 1, I wasn't allowed to enter his room. Ever. Rule number 2, if he locked himself in the bathroom for long periods, I wasn't to knock. Rule number 3, if I ever heard scratching at my door at night, I was not to open it. I laughed at first. Scratching? I asked and Jake just shrugged. Probably mice. But that night I heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Slow, deliberate. Right outside my door. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering. Jake! The scratching stopped. Silence. The air felt thick, suffocating, like something was waiting just beyond the door. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. The next morning, I woke up feeling like hell. Exhausted, dizzy like I'd been drained. When I stumbled into the bathroom and flicked on the light, I noticed something strange on my wrist, 2 tiny puncture wounds. They weren't deep, but they were there, too perfect to be a bug bite. I shook it off. Maybe I scratched myself in my sleep. Maybe it was nothing. But then it happened again, and again. Every night, I woke up feeling weaker. Every morning, I found new marks on my neck, my ankle, my forearm. I started chugging coffee just to stay awake. My hands shook, my skin felt cold. Something was wrong. One night, I set up my phone to record myself sleeping. The next morning, I checked the footage. At 3:12 a.m., my bedroom door slowly swung open. My stomach clenched as I watched the screen, my fingers turning ice cold. Jake stepped inside, his movements smooth, too smooth. And then I saw his eyes. Not brown, not blue, glowing red. My breath caught as he walked to my bed, leaned down, and bit my wrist. I should have woken up, should have screamed, but I didn't. I just lay there completely still like I was in some kind of trance. Jake fed on me for over a minute. Then, as silently as he came, he backed away and left, shutting the door behind him. My stomach twisted as I replayed the footage, my pulse hammering. I had to get out. I waited until sunset to confront him. He was sitting in the living room, the TV flickering across his gaunt face. He looked worse than before. Hollow cheek, veins faintly visible beneath his pale skin. What the hell are you doing to me? My voice shook. Jake barely looked up. You already know. My mouth went dry. He turned to face me fully, his red eyes gleaming. A vampire. The words felt ridiculous coming out of my mouth, but I knew they were true. The bite marks, the exhaustion, the way my body felt empty. You're feeding on me, I whispered. Not enough to kill you, he said, as if that made it better. Just enough to get by. I took a step back, the walls closing in around me. You could have killed me. I was careful, Jake said simply. I've done this before. My stomach flipped. Before. How many roommates had there been before me? How many had he bled dry? My breathing quickened. I needed to leave. Now. I turned and ran for the door. I didn't make it. The world tilted. My vision blurred. My legs buckled beneath me. I hit the floor hard, my limbs heavy, my breath shallow. Jake crouched beside me, his cold fingers brushing my face. You're too weak, he murmured. You're already mine. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was in my bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. My body felt stronger, normal. I sat up, heart pounding. Had it all been a dream? I scrambled to Jake's room. The door was wide open. His room was empty. No furniture. No clothes. No Jake. Like he had never been there. I should have felt relieved. But when I looked in the mirror, I froze. My reflection was normal, except for one thing. My eyes were starting to turn red. And the worst part? As I stared at my own face, heart pounding, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't hungry for food. I was hungry for something else. And I didn't know how much longer I could fight it. Please do subscribe for more chilling stories.